Hello, Professor. And for my final project, I chose to do it on Hidetaka Miyazaki, the creator of the Souls-like genre. The name of my project is The Vision of Hidetaka Miyazaki and the Legacy of From Software, and an exploration of the Souls-like genre. It is presented and lectured by me, Usehf Kisswani, and we'll dive into how him and his development of the Souls-like genre has led to an impact on gaming forever. We'll look at the presentation outline. So at first, we'll get a brief introduction to Hidetaka Miyazaki, like his childhood, his education, his earlyhood career before becoming a game developer, an overview of From Software's founding and evolution, a deep dive into the Soul series and its impact on gaming, an exploration of other notable games from Software that he was maybe involved with or not involved with, future projects and direction under Miyazaki's leadership, such as titles that we may be looking forward to, or if he wants to dive into anime or other shows or any type of other media he'd like to go forward with. And lastly, his impact on the gaming industry, as we know he's had one with the creation of the Souls-like genre, which has changed the history of gaming forever. So here we have his early life and education. He was born in Shizuoka, Japan, 1974. He developed a love for reading, especially Western fantasy novels, and he studied social science at Keio University. We can see that this is very different from his latest role in game development and what he's known for now. He initially worked in the IT industry, including a role at the Oracle Corporation Company, and we'll see that he changes later to game development, and this comes from things of influence of reading English books like The Lord of the Rings and Choose Your Own Adventure series. This is funny because we'll look at his later series and we'll see how much these fantasy genres impacted the later Souls-like games, and I believe this had a huge impact on him and is responsible for the games that he developed today. His career beginnings. He joined From Software in 2004, inspired by playing the popular game Ico. He initially worked on the Armored Core series as a game planner, as we see not as a game developer, not yet at least. Armored Core was a third-person shooter mecha video game, which was developed obviously by From Software. Armored Core became extremely popular as it was a mech-based game which was very popular due to shows like Gundam and other mech animes, media, video games, and other stuff like that in Japan, which is very popular at the moment, which led to an increase in his success. He had a rapid rise in the From Software company due to his innovative ideas, and strong work ethic, which we could see from his later titles and how hard he worked to bring us the games that we love today. He then became the director of Demon's Souls, which is one of the first Souls-like games, or the first Souls-like game we've ever seen, after showing extreme enthusiasm for the project. His rise to prominence. His rise to prominence became due to his leadership role in Demon's Souls and its unexpected success. This was extremely unexpected because in the whole history of video games, we have never seen something like the Souls-like genre, which included the mechanic of rolling and fighting bosses in an extremely hard game. The Demon's Souls title was the game that introduced the Souls-like genre and what cemented Miyazaki as a legend in the gaming space, which at first had initial skepticism from Sony and the internal teams that doubted him, but he overcame these doubts. This success of Demon's Souls was first in Japan and then had a subsequent cult-like following in the West, which resulted in him becoming the company president in 2014. And right here we have the Demon's Souls cover art. So let's look at the early history of From Software now. It was founded in 1986 which had an original focus on business software, which is extremely funny to me that a company that had an original focus on business software is now one of the biggest gaming companies in the world due to people like Hidetaka Miyazaki and his ideas. It had a transition to gaming with the release of Kingsfield title in 1994. The early success of the Kingsfield series laid the groundwork for future projects, which actually allowed for Hidetaka Miyazaki to do the things that he could do today. So we are very grateful. Key developments. Key developments of this company was the introduction of Miyazaki's influence in the mid 2000s, with obviously, as stated before, Armored Core and the Demon's Souls video game and Souls-like genre, and the shift towards more challenging and immersive game experiences. Before, with games like Call of Duty and other games like that, it did not have the extreme challenging aspect that the Souls-like genre did, that Hidetaka Miyazaki added. But it was not so challenging that it was impossible. It was that with hard work and effort you could accomplishment, which caused a love for the Souls-like genre. And he also had an emphasis on unique game design and elements and a player experience, adding things that we've never seen from other games, which made the person who purchased the game extremely interested and intrigued. Development of the Souls series. The origins of Demon Souls concept focus on challenge and player mastery. It was Miyazaki's vision of a dark, immersive fantasy world, and as stated before, had an influence of Western fantasy literature and mythology. It had dark, interconnected world design and deep lore, something Miyazaki is extremely known for his lore and the way he puts together games that makes extreme sense. It's like a whole movie. As stated before, it had an initial reaction from Sony, and there was some skepticism, but it then turned into support after seeing the potential. Developmental challenges. At first, Miyazaki had to work with budget constraints and resource limitation during development, which is crazy because now we could see how even with these challenges he was able to create such a beautiful genre. As stated before, skepticism. He had to also overcome technical limitations at the time to create a seamless and working world without bugs and glitches, because no matter how good a game is, if there is a numerous amounts of bugs and glitches that does not allow the player to have a good gaming experience, the game may never succeed. And they also struggled with fostering creativity under time pressure and pressure from, obviously stated before, Sony and stuff like that, and that resulted in extreme pressure on Miyazaki to create a successful game. And at the beginning, the final product had mixed reviews, but after people understood that the whole point of the game was to be hard but challenging, but it was possible to beat, as stated before, with hard work and effort. It led to a cult-like status that it has now today, and led to an initial success after this. We're going to look at the defining gameplay elements of Demon's Souls, which started the genre of the Souls-like genre. It had high difficulty in its role in player engagement. There is a lot of engagement in these games, and you are not held by the hand to complete them. It had intricate world design with interconnected levels and hidden secrets and Easter eggs that thousands of players have to find. It had an innovative multiplayer element with online features such as co-op and PvP. It had a strategic combat system, which had an emphasis on timing, position, on strategy. But one thing was so different to other games was the rolling aspect. The rolling aspect in the game, when fighting a boss, allowed you to, when the boss throws a move, you are able to roll and have an iframe. Iframe is something where you cannot be hit, and if you time this iframe at the correct time and learn the boss's moves after fighting and fighting and fighting, you're able to dodge that attack. And that was the new experience that created such a satisfying time for the player. It also did a really good job at rewarding player exploration and perseverance. If you persevered and explored, you are rewarded with better items and other things which allow you to progress in the game and make the game a little bit more easy for you. So it's not only just fighting bosses and getting killed and killed and killed and learning the boss's moveset, but you are also able to explore and find different items that may help you with that certain boss. Then we had the evolution into the Dark Souls series, which cemented Miyazaki in the gaming industry. We had the expand, and it went from Demon Souls into Dark Souls. There was the introduction of Dark Souls in 2011, which had a more expansive and polished experience, but it continued to emphasize on difficulty and intricate world building and lore. It had an enhancement in game mechanics with things like the Estus Flask, bonfire system, and more. The Estus Flask being a flask that allows you to heal during boss fights, not make it easier, but allows you to get a little bit of time during boss fights when they're not hitting you, and if you catch an iframe, to be able to use a flask to heal up. The bonfire system acted as a checkpoint around the map for that you could teleport around the map to get to places, and it allowed you to sit there and regenerate your health. This series, Dark Souls, is responsible then for establishing the dedicated fan base and critical acclaim that Miyazaki and the Souls-like genre has today. We're going to do now an introduction to Dark Souls. Dark Souls is an action RPG set in a dark fantasy world filled with obviously intricate lore like Miyazaki loves to do, and interconnected environments where players are facing challenging combat and deep exploration mechanics. The key themes are to struggle, perseverance, and discovery like stated before. Discovery of new items, new swords, new bosses, new realms, new dungeons. Perseverance. Sometimes you may be fighting a boss for over 6 hours. It may take you a little time to learn the boss's moves and know when to roll and catch the iframe, and that's where that struggle comes in. But if you persevere, you will succeed. With each release of Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3, there was critical acclaim. And as this Dark Souls genre came out, it had influence on subsequent games from other companies outside of From Software, developing the Souls-like genre and the Souls-like game. The key mechanics, like stated before, challenging combat. The bonfire checkpoint system, which allowed you, right, as shown right here, allowed you to sit there and rest and regain your health and regain your flask and regain your items back. The deep and mysterious lore, which you are able to discover while playing the game by reading item descriptions, listening to bosses' voice lines, and stuff like that. There is also a non-linear world exploration. They don't hold your hands like other story games such as Final Fantasy, right, and things like that. You are supposed to figure it out yourself. It's not extremely linear. These games also had high replay value, where there's multiple endings, DLCs, there's things that you will never figure out on your first playthrough, and other stuff like that that you could replay to figure out, which allowed for extreme replayability, causing extreme success. Let's look at the Dark Souls genre, how it had influence on other developers. Like stated before, it had the rise of the Souls-like genre and its defining characteristics. there are some notable games influenced by the Soul series which are extremely popular, like Neo and Hollow Knight. These are extremely popular games. It caused the adoption of challenging gameplay mechanics across all genres. Games were made from kind of easy and normal to casual to more hard-based games. It had an expansion into different genres and stuff like action RPGs, platformers. It had an impact on indie and AAA developers, which inspired a new approach to game design, not the same old approach we were getting with the same old regurgitated games we have seen before. Now we have the next Souls-like game developed by Miyazaki, known as Bloodborne. To describe Bloodborne, it is an action RPG set in Gothic horror world inspired by Lovecraft and Victorian era aesthetics. The game featured fast-paced combat and a unique rally system. It was released in 2015 and it had extreme critical and commercial success. It introduced a new type of setting with a Gothic horror setting, as stated, inspired by Lovecraft and Victorian era. It had a more fast-paced combat, fast-paced bosses with things being thrown at you and faster moveset compared to the other Souls games. It had unique mechanics such as the rally system and trick weapons that you were able to use on bosses. And it had an extreme influence on action, RPG genre, and player center. After that, we have Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice is an action-adventure game set in feudal Japan. It emphasizes stealth, precise combat, and the unique resurrection mechanic that we have not seen in other Souls-like games. It was released in 2019 and is set in feudal Japan with a focus on stealth and precise combat. Now, this is the biggest thing that has changed from other Souls-like games like Bloodborne and Demon Souls and Dark Souls. It had an emphasis on parrying and timing, which is a departure from the Souls mechanic. Now me, somebody who has played the Souls-like games such as Elden Ring and Dark Souls games, you have to focus on your iframes and rolling. But when switching to Sekiro, for a player, it is such a hard challenge because now you have to focus on, instead of rolling, you have to focus on the parrying mechanic, which parrying is blocking the move at the exact time the boss throws it. And there was also the introduction to the resurrection mechanic, meaning that in Souls-like games such as Elden Ring, Dark Souls, and Bloodborne, when fighting a boss, you can never resurrect yourself. But while fighting a boss in Sekiro, you always had 2 lives. This game won Game of the Year and it had critical acclaim. It also had innovations in game design and storytelling within Japan. Now, the reason that this game is so important was because it showed that Miyazaki could create a game that is Souls-like, but also has different mechanics, and it could still be extremely successful, winning Gamer of the Year or Game of the Year award. So now we're going to look at the contributions to the genre of Miyazaki. Well, obviously he created it. It also had, and he created the unique settings and atmosphere of the games, giving ideas to other game developers to create this, such as Gothic, feudal Japan, or dark fantasy. He had the innovation in gameplay mechanic with the roll system, the parrying system. He was able to expand the Souls-like genre with every new game, from Demon Souls to Dark Souls to Bloodborne to Sekiro. Each game was Souls-like genre but had a slight different experience that made the game so interesting and new. And lastly, as stated before, Miyazaki had extreme critical and commercial success, establishing a strong legacy in the history of video games forever, creating a new genre that we'll see for years and years and years to come. Let's see his influence on game design. So obviously, as stated, we're going over what we stated and how this on his influence on game design. He had the adoption of challenging gameplay, which focused on skill and strategy. He had the innovative multiplayer integration, which allowed a game to be mainly single player, but also have multiplayer aspects with PvP and a mode where you were able to complete the story co-op as well if you would like. Lastly, we're going to look at his large community that he created with the Souls-like genre. The community and fan base are extremely dedicated and passionate, with millions of YouTube videos and Reddit forums and wikis and everything. There has become a cult-like following for the Souls-like genre. His fans have high expectations for challenge and reward, and he is expected to set new standards every game he makes. Also, with this large community, he has created things like the no-hit community. The no-hit community is known as the community that tries to beat these Souls-like games without being hit, and people will dedicate hours and months watching or trying to achieve these accomplishments, which resulted in a large community that he has today, and they are extremely appreciative for what he has done and will continue to play his games. Even now, people are playing the games like Dark Souls 1 and Demon Souls. Next, we have Elden Ring. Now, Elden Ring is his newest game in the Souls-like genre, and Elden Ring is an action RPG developed in collaboration with D. George R. Martin. It features an open world with new mechanics and expansive lore. Elden Ring being my favorite game due to the collaboration with George R. Martin, who is known for creating Game of Thrones and that whole franchise, has changed the Souls-like genre from previously Sekiro, Demon Souls, Bloodborne, and Dark Souls, and has added an open world to it, allowing you to explore with even more non-linear story. It has over 165 bosses, with over 70 plus being unique, having unique movesets and such. Also in this game, like always, Miyazaki introduced a new mechanic, that being summons. So the bosses in Elden Ring are harder, but if you are a more casual, you are able to use summons, things that you fight throughout the game, and if you beat them, you are able to use them as summons, and this allows you to work with your summon to beat the boss. It is still extremely challenging, but these summons allow for a more casual player. We saw 23 million copies sold with this game, and there's an extremely hyped DLC coming June 20th known as Shadow of the Erdtree. His vision for the future. He has future directions for From Software, with maybe opening up a potential new genre and project. He's going to still have a continued commitment to challenging gameplay and innovation. And he is looking to have future collaborations and projects such as the George R. Martin one, and maybe other big creators like him. Conclusion. In conclusion, we have seen Miyazaki's influence on gaming and how he has left an everlasting footprint on gaming with his Souls-like genre. He has impacted game design and industry, forever changing it, making developers of AAA games work harder to satisfy viewers and setting a new standard every time. Thank you. That is my presentation on the Souls-like genre and Hidetaka Miyazaki and how he developed it. Have a good day.